We are about to start. And I'm really excited because we have few thousands of clients that are agencies. And we are starting this new series where we invite people who have the knowledge on a very niche topic to help our audience to be better at what they do. And this month at the WP Umbrella, we released a big product update on security to help agencies to manage security at scale. And while I was doing the QA on security with our user on this new interface, so many questions came up. And I was like, okay, I need like to take the two best guys on this topic and to ask them the questions to have the best answer for you. And that's how this webinar was created. So I invited Oliver, who is the CEO at Patchstack, and Patchstack is, among other things, the biggest vulnerability database for WordPress websites. And you do much more. But if you want to add something, Oliver, you will have the floor. And I invited Ben. Ben is the founder of Rocket.net, and he is now acting as a chief product officer for hosting.com. And we decided to invite Ben because when it comes to security, you have three layers. You have your websites, you have your clients, and you have your hosting company. And we are going to cover all of that today. Oliver, Ben, do you want to add something before we start?
Yeah, I mean, we're a partner with WP Umbrella for a while. At Patchstack, essentially a threat intelligence company, but we are the largest vulnerability coordinators and processors in the world. Over 1,000 plugin developers trust us as their security point of contact. So when Elementor team fixes a security vulnerability, we are the first one to be notified, and then our customers, or then WP Umbrella's customers, are the first ones to get notified as well. And together with that, we are providing automated security fixes, or what we call mitigation rules, to the websites to eliminate the vulnerabilities while you can go and update your websites, not at 2 a.m., but maybe at a little bit of a better time frame. So that's essentially what we do, covering WordPress, working with many different hosting companies as well, and expanding even outside of WordPress soon. So it's something to keep an eye on.
Thanks a lot. Ben, do you want to add something before we start?
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to be here. Always a good time to connect with Oliver. We definitely see eye to eye on the security landscape. So much so that we are actively working at hosting.com alongside with Patchstack to kind of help go full circle on the security approach that we take to get more into the application layer. Huge fans of WP Umbrella as well. We've kind of been connected and following for a very long time. Love what you guys do. So looking forward to offering any advice or feedback I can to help the audience and help provide a more secure internet.
Wonderful. Speaking of audience, just to give more context and to frame the discussion, we are talking to agencies, and one of the things that make agencies special is that they manage at least dozens of websites. So it's not security 101, it's security for agencies whose job is to make WordPress sites at scale. And without further ado, I will start with one question for you, Oliver. What does secure enough actually means in practice for an agency?
Secure enough? I would say it pretty much starts from the point where you never stop thinking about security. I think the moment when you stop thinking about it and you think that you are secure enough, that's the exact moment when you're going to fail. This is what we've seen over and over again, and that is one of the reasons why we always recommend against like security silver bullets, in that sense, where when you see someone telling you, like, if you're using a certain product, then you don't need to worry about security anymore, or like you get the good night's sleep, and stuff like that. So I would say it really much is, the first thing is like the kind of like a mentality of like, how do you think about security? I think the most important part of that is like thinking of security as an ongoing process rather than something that you click a button and enable. Security isn't performance where you can kind of like, do a performance optimization and then it runs really fast. Security is something that you do over a long period of time, and it is kind of like part of an ongoing process. But I think the basics is always maintenance. I mean, that's what WP Umbrella is helping agencies to do. Is like, whatever website is that you're running, it all starts from the maintenance. You need to make sure that everything is up to date. You are not basically lagging behind security updates, and obviously that you are using a trusted web hosting provider that knows what they're doing, because the website is hosted somewhere, and behind that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. You want to make sure that you're choosing a hosting company that does that for you, so you don't have to get your hands dirty and do the maintenance of your, I don't know, PHP versions and how the whole networking works on that end and so forth. And I think the maintenance and choosing a secure infrastructure are kind of like maybe one of the pillars.
Thank you. This is a very nice transition for Ben, actually, because my second question was, what part of security belong to the host and what never will? Because what I have seen is that sometimes the agency is blaming the client, sometimes the agency is blaming the host, sometimes the agency is accountable for what's happening and what should be secured. So Ben, could you give us and share with us, pardon, your knowledge on what is the hosting managing when it comes to security?
Sure. So, up until recently, companies like Patchstack are able to make security obtainable for the common user. Back when I was still at StackPath, and what kind of led to me ultimately building Rocket was configuring a WAF is very difficult. So I wanted to create this like all-in-one solution that with a security first approach for WordPress users. And that's where kind of bringing Cloudflare Enterprise to market. And ultimately, I think it should be completely on the host to at least guide. I mean, we have a responsibility, right? So like, just like all of the agencies that have to manage these customer websites, we're managing the agency's livelihood as well as the livelihood of their customers. So, for me, I think it's just unacceptable that, somebody, we obviously can't block everything and protect everything. We do take a very proactive approach. Whenever we see something suspicious, we have a shared Slack channel with Patchstack to like, hey, have you guys seen anything like this? And, we've kind of like just sort of accidentally created this like feedback loop with Monarchs and Patchstack and some industry leaders to, even if it's a competitor, right? Like we've been responsible when there was a massive bricks exploit, we worked with Immunify 360 to get a rule deployed as soon as possible, which ended up saving the entire world that used Immunify 360, right? So it's not just about Rocket's the only secure, hosting.com's the only secure, right? I think we're just, especially with AI and all of these new automated pen testing tools that are coming out, I think we're seeing more exploits than we could have ever imagined, and in 0 days. And I think, we're getting to a place where the hosts there shouldn't be a choice, right? Like you shouldn't, if your hosting provider isn't providing some sort of web application firewall or OWASP top 10 protection or malware scanning, you really need to go find a host that does, because it's more important than ever now with all of this automated stuff. So that's where, from a hosting perspective, we do a network layer, which is with Cloudflare's WAF. We have an origin layer, which is a little more context into the request itself, which is, now effectively Monarchs for malware and WAF as well. But then what we're doing with Patchstack is now we're getting into the application layer, So that way we actually have a full 360-degree coverage for the customer, but we want to do it in a little bit different of an approach by adding as much value to these packages as possible. So like, I want to be in a world where an agency comes to hosting.com, they deploy their new project. It's already got Patchstack installed. They've got Monarch's protection, and we're giving them the best possible solution that we can. And it just works for them. Right. So I think especially now, it's more important than ever for the hosting companies to step up and really put focus on the security. And to Oliver's earlier point, not just WordPress, right? Laravel and all of these different tools out there are just as important and just as exposed, if not more, right?
I think what Ben says, just a highlight for our audience, Oliver, before I gave you the floor. I think what Ben just said is so important, because when you look for a hosting company, people always think about uptime and performance and price. Those are the three things. Are my sites up? Are they fast? And how much it's going to cost me? But I think it's really important to take into consideration the huge red flags Ben put there. And if you're listening to this podcast, please keep that in mind. And sorry, Oliver, I give you the mic back.
So something that Ben mentioned in terms of, like, for example, all these automated attacks going on, giving you a little bit of a sneak peek into, Patchstack is releasing this annual WordPress state of security white paper, right? Every year we're collecting together all of the data from the industry. This year we're doing it in collaboration with Monarchs. So Patchstack is covering the first side of, like, when vulnerabilities are found to vulnerabilities being mitigated. We are looking into across all of our partners in terms of what are the vulnerabilities that are getting exploited, and then Monarchs is covering the second layer of, like, when vulnerabilities don't get exploited, what happens when they are getting actually infected, right? Something that we've noticed from, and this is going to be published next week, but something that we have noticed is that the average time to exploit new vulnerabilities of WordPress vulnerabilities is right now at 5 hours. So wow. 5 hours of vulnerability going
5 minutes, right?
I think so. Yes, it's going
lobster bots out there.
Yes, but even you think about 5 hours. That means that if 00 at midnight, there is a plugin update coming out with a vulnerability or like a security fix, by 5 a.m. the website is hacked. Yep. So now there's a question, like, when you're and that is what I always tell to people is, like, just like, oh, I'm just going to update the plugin, right? This is not the security measure anymore. Just updating a plugin is not going to be a security measure. By the time you're doing it, it's too late. I had a second thought about, like, this, something that you mentioned earlier when you did an intro to this is, like, agencies, blaming hosts and when things go south, right? I think this blaming part is also in a way wrong, right? Because ultimately, it's a question of responsibility, and whether like I give a responsibility of something to someone, and whether this someone is also accepting this responsibility. So the moment when someone is going to blame, let's say an agency going and blame hosting company or a security vendor or whoever for a failure of security, that always shows a conflict between a mismatch of responsibility, passed forward and received. So when you go into this, when this kind of a situation happens, when a website is getting hacked and then a customer is going to a hosting company, is like, hey, what the hell? Then I think it's a good question to also ask, like, did the hosting company ever accepted the responsibility that they were responsible for the security? And a lot of the hosting companies don't. So I think this is a good question to have when you're going to look for a hosting company. Is like, hey, I'm going to host my website with you. Are you taking this responsibility? Because if they are saying no, then, you should never kind of like sleep tight, you're fine, because you have this responsibility still on you.
Boom. Plugins and themes vulnerabilities are the headline risk. What's the smartest way for an agency to handle them at scale? Now that we know that the 5 hours window is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
I mean, I really think it's up to intelligence. First of all, are you aware that there is a security vulnerability present on your website? And the second question is like, what can you do about it? The whole reason why we built Patchstack, for example, was that we can bypass the need to install updates to mitigate vulnerabilities, right? So every time we are releasing a vulnerability disclosure, adding a new vulnerability into our database, we actually have internal process in place where the moment when we publish things, we can only publish them together with a mitigation rule. So whenever you're seeing high or medium Patchstack priority scored vulnerabilities, being published in the database, that moment already all of the websites connected to Patchstack have security rule activated. So that is the speed that we need to have, and this is kind of like one of the few ways how you can kind of like make sure this happens. Obviously, you can also do auto updates, right? Auto updates is something that can help as well. But this is like anytime I talk to any agency using Elementor, for example, and pitching them the idea of auto updating websites with Elementor, they're like, no thanks. Everyone is so afraid of the websites breaking down. So there's like these kind of like decisions that you need to make, right? But then there's also the other layers, right? Some level of the attacks you can already prevent, like on the DNS level, like with Cloudflare Enterprise, for example, when you can kind of like those more generic ones, you can like block away. There are common attackers that go after attacks, and some of them are targeted against WordPress, but the same IP might actually be already blocked in a abuse list. So you might be able to already reduce amount of attack surface with that as well. So really it's kind of like this cheese model where, it's like, it's just kind of like comes from the network side, and you block some there, and then you block some on the server level, and then ultimately it ends up in the application. And even then you need to have an incident response plan, disaster recovery plan, essentially, of like really like already think about like when I'm getting hacked tomorrow, what are the first 3 steps that I'm going to take? Like, what is it actually that I'm going to do? Who's the person I'm going to call to, and so forth. So, just playing through this, I think, is super valuable to everyone. And yeah, I always like to, whenever people, ask this kind of question, I always say like, already consider yourself hacked. That is the best, thing you could do. That's how you're actually prepared and can fight against this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe, especially agencies, it's worth having a just in case plan, like that way. And we do that at Rocket, right? So when we built our disaster recovery strategy, we have 2 sets of backups. One is a daily backup that customers can restore from. The second is an hourly snapshot that we do. So if God forbid something happens to a server, we could actually restore the entire thing, with a maximum exposure of 1 hour. But we would actually run various smoke tests. Like we would do restores once a month just to make sure the integrity was there and that things work. So, if we do, God forbid, have a hardware issue, we know exactly what we're going to do to solve that. And we create 2 work streams. One, somebody on the SRE team will try to, fix the issue at hand. And 2, we just kick off a restore anyways. And whichever one gets done first, we make the judgment call of, do we just potentially have is it a 30-minute window of data loss or whatnot? But what I'm getting at is we made sure to actually write out a plan and test it and make sure that we had all of our ducks in a row to save not only time, but just have an actual plan in place. So I think it is really important for agencies to think like, what if, right? Like, do I contact the host? Do I restore from like a blog vault backup? Or what is the plan that I should do if this happens to me?
And it's a good point also, like if you're playing through it and if your play plan is like contact the host, that's a really good moment to do a reality check, whether the host actually even takes the responsibility, like play through it. Like even if your website is not hacked today, reach out to them and tell them their website is hacked. See how fast do they respond. What's going to start happening, and it's a really good moment to play through it and then actually see. So next time when it actually really happens, there's no surprises of, oh damn, my host didn't respond to me for 3 days. You can make that decision now to basically go somewhere where you get the support what you need in, I don't know, a few hours.
This is another amazing takeaway from this webinar. At the end, open a ticket. Sorry, Ben, for what it's going to trigger. But at the end of the webinar, just open a ticket and say, hey, my website has been hacked. What can I do? And see how it goes. And I think it will give you a good indicator on how serious about security your hosting company is.
There's definitely nothing to even apologize for, right? Because I think, the approach here is maybe getting in touch with your host to understand what would happen if my site was infected with malware, or what would happen, what are the next steps, and just getting an understanding. Like, I can't tell you how many customers have migrated to Rocket, and I would explain the disaster recovery plan that I just talked about, and they said, wow, I've never actually thought about that. My host has never told me that before. It's actually very reassuring, like natasha'skitchen.com. It's her livelihood, it's her income, it's everything she does. So we put that on its own enterprise node, and I can tell you right now, if something happened to that node, I could have Natasha's website completely operational within 10 minutes on a brand new server, right? And she'll she would, maximum data exposure would be 1 hour, right, of potentially not having data. And I'm not aware of anybody else in the industry doing things like that. But for Natasha, she doesn't need to worry about it. She just focuses on cooking and doing awesome stuff in the kitchen and building her business. And we just take care of all of that. So I would really encourage, agencies and website owners, if they're not aware of what the host will do, or even what Patchstack, there may be Patchstack customers that just may not understand all of the benefits and what Patchstack does offer. So, I think what really set, even Patchstack as well, Oliver's very active. His team's incredible. We are here. We're always talking to customers, especially since joining hosting.com. I have been able to take more of the day-to-day, being in the weeds and operations, and have help with this massive team we have now. And I've been able to stay focused on doing things like this, creating, innovation, innovation and driving growth on the product side of the house, which is where I love to do. As much as I love supporting customers and managing servers, now I can have these calls with Oliver and say, how do we build a better SKU so that way we can get these things in hands of customers? But then on the flip side, we also build a relationship so the customer now knows of Oliver and his team and what they're getting, right? Because that's really what it comes down to.
I think an important thing to maybe ask from your host as well is, like, what are their actual existing relationships with security companies? Because if they are saying like, oh, there's none, then they are missing out of a lot of information. Like Ben said in the beginning, like, they have, this shared Slack channel with Monarchs and like with Patchstack. And, when there was an incident, they shared information with, Immunify 360 and like, all this information going back and forth, having these relationships. If your host doesn't have these relationships, then even if a 0 day is going, nuts, like we had like a few weeks ago, right? There was a 0 day in a similar product like WP Umbrella in a different one. Then, it was, mass attacked, or like websites were taken over, in thousands. And if, like, what we did, we notified all of the hosting partners, like, hey, this is happening, here's all this information. If your hosting company doesn't have even this relationship with any of the security companies, then, they don't even know that it's happening. They have absolutely nothing to kind of like notify you on about, or even kind of like take any kind of measures. So this is maybe another thing that they would look into, like how active the hosting company is in the community. And if they're super isolated and they are not talking to different hosts and they're not talking to security companies, then I think that is not in their benefit, really.
One question, Oliver, because I get many questions about what is, so we called it SIG Protect at WP Umbrella, but it's virtual patching, the technology that you have developed at Patchstack. How does it work? And is it better than WordFence? Because this is the question I get every single time. Can I drop WordFence if I install Seed Protect? And why?
Yeah. So with Patchstack, I think the main value that you get is the fact that we know about security vulnerabilities first. I mean, you cannot protect against what you don't know about. So the fact that over 1,000 plugin developers have set Patchstack as their security point of contact, and they literally send us, like, even if they are using like a competitor's bug bounty programs or whatever, and vulnerabilities are reported to them originally, then the vendors themselves still pass all of the information through us. So when the information is getting disclosed and made public, then we are still the first one to be able to send out the protection rules. So this is giving like a huge benefit in terms of, like I just mentioned, like it takes 5 hours to exploit vulnerabilities now. So, and I think this number is going to drop significantly over the year of 2026. But this really gives us like the benefit of essentially providing this level of speed and speed of mitigation. I would say a big difference also is the way how we are doing it. I would say the traditional and legacy ways of how WordFence is working and those products is working is that they basically load hundreds of security rules in front of your websites at the same time. Like everything that they have, they are putting in front of every single website. They don't have a way of saying like this website needs this sort of security rules, this one needs a different kind of security rules. So this, first of all, makes it much more, like if you go even to their website, like WordPress website, for example, you see that the total number of security rules that they have is like 500 something. In Patchstack, it's over 13,000. And the reason for that is that we don't have to put those 13,000 rules in front of every single website. We deploy them exactly when they are needed for a website, because we are basically dynamically checking whether the websites have specific vulnerabilities. When a vulnerability is there, it gets this specific security rule for that vulnerability. If you're updating to a fixed version, we're removing that. So what is a huge benefit to that is that you don't have to worry about false positives. But the second huge benefit is that you are not going to have a performance overhead. And there is a huge reason. I mean, Ben can talk about that. There is most likely a very good reason why you don't see any hosting company deploying, WordFence on scale, and why they are deploying Patchstack at scale. It's, if this plugin is going to consume more resources, then it's going to make money for hosting company, then most likely they are not going to do that. So, the performance benefit of doing dynamic deployment of security rules in this way, how Patchstack does it, we have almost no kind of like visible performance difference that is going to be deployed on the site. So short, TLDR basically is that we have faster mitigation, wider coverage, and less of a performance impact.
Thank you. Ben, do you want to add something, or can we move to the next question?
Oh, I think we've covered it really well. I fully agree with Oliver. So
wonderful. This one is for you, Ben. Is backup part of security? And what's your recommendation? What should be the backup frequency? What should be the retention period? Should they be off-site? Should they be on-site? Like the whole backup topic.
That's actually a good thing to kind of bring up here, because I think when we think about security, sure, we're thinking about getting hacked or whatnot, but I mean, there has been unfortunate scenarios in the past where data centers caught on fire, companies go out of business, and sometimes agencies don't have their data. It's very important to understand your host backup strategy, right? Like we do, like, for example, there's some hosting companies out there that'll do backups to the same server, backups to the same data center. At rockethosting.com, we specifically do not back up to the same data centers because, again, I mean, there was an OVH, I think it was Paris or something, and it caught on fire. And literally, like, I think WP Rocket, like, pretty much lost a lot, right? And they had to kind of, like, rebuild their website or something. But, it's really important to think about integrity as well as security of your data and your customers, right? So I don't necessarily think you need to sync your customer's website to your computer every night. But there probably is something to be said about having a, I've seen many cases where some of our enterprise grade agencies want to have their own monthly offsite backup just so they have it. Some of them are even compliance related, right? So, I think, even the rocket.net website, we have it backed up to Wasabi. We have it backed up to Cloudflare R2. We have it deployed on multiple servers in different data centers, like just in case, right? But I do think it's very important up there with, because in the sad event, maybe you do get hacked and it's so bad that you do actually have to restore to a backup. It can happen. We have at Rocket, we stuck with like a 14-day retention. It's going up to 30, but I can count on one hand in my career how many times somebody's actually had to go back more than 2 weeks. Typically what we see is like same day before, maybe a couple days before. But quite honestly, for the most part with WordPress, it's very, like, we actually dumb down the backup restoration experience for customers to just say, what I found when I was doing support early on at Rocket was the majority of the time it was just like a bad plugin update, and all you had to do was restore the plugins folder. But then what we were seeing is people were going in there and rolling their entire site back, and it's like, another big thing that's super powerful is like when there's a bad core update that breaks a site, we just run a WP CLI command to reinstall the working version for the customer, and everything just works. Like, we've come so far with WordPress core and stability, being able to go back and forth from versions without hosing a site. It's super powerful. So, we end up actually talking to the customer when it comes down to an issue, like, what do you need? What do you need to achieve? Well, I updated a plugin. Cool. Let's just restore your plugins folder, or let's just restore your theme. So we've tried to make it as simple as possible, but a lot of people, get confused on what they need to restore when they run into an issue. But yeah, I think super important. Definitely needs to be part of your business strategy to make sure that you have that data integrity.
Two comments here, because we've been doing backups. We've been working on backups at WP Umbrella for the past 6 months, 2 engineers full time, and we've made so many discoveries, WordPress related, hosted related, and so on. Never trust your backup, and never trust your hosting backup, your plugin backups. Never trust any kind of backups. And what I mean by this is just like with security. Ask your hosting company, hey, what do you do with backups? Where are they stored? Is it on the same server? Or how long do you keep them? And don't only trust what they say, look into it. We've built something like insane at WP Umbrella to make sure that we had 100% integrity on backups. And we almost have this everywhere now. What I can tell is that with most WordPress backup plugins, folders, files, something is missing, and you never know about it until it's too late. This is one of my takeaway. And the other takeaway is that Ben is so right when he talks about selective restoration. There is no need to restore your full website and go nuclear about this if you just have to roll back Elementor. Selective restoration is arriving on WP Umbrella, I think, next week or in a couple of weeks. We already have safe update. There are plenty of ways to update your website securely without having to go nuclear on a restoration.
Totally.
Okay.
One quick more note about the backups is that make sure the backups are malware scanned. The amount of time I've seen people restore like 5 months old backups or whatever, and then they realize, oh, I've actually been hacked already 5 months ago. This is quite common. So this is something to kind of like make sure is happening as well. And you can ask that from the host or your provider whether these are being scanned at some level. This is, I think, important.
Absolutely.
100%. We talked a lot about vulnerabilities. What are the other security risks agencies underestimate today?
Passwords.
Passwords, yeah. I mean, in general, just like avoid giving your customers admin accounts. It's just like, if possible, just don't do it. I mean, try to convince them not to want it. I would say. And I mean, like, if you're providing maintenance services to them, don't even, maybe in some cases, like, tell them that's an option. I mean, that is the most common issue we see, is that you're giving people an administrative account where they don't necessarily need it, but then these people are often also having, I would say, reduced cyber hygiene in general. It is possible that their passwords are quite, bad. They are reusing their passwords all over the place. Their passwords leak from different data dumps, but also their devices can be compromised. The people are using whatever browser extensions and things like that are basically collecting together session cookies from WP admin. All these all of these are being sold on the dark market in active feeds, and you can just like buy access to WP admin accounts like that. So I would say, yeah, like if you can avoid giving your customers an administrator accounts, that makes a huge difference already. And if you have to give them an administrator account, make sure that they are using like password managers, or even enforce people to, or anyone who uses administrator accounts, enforce them to use two-factor authentication. I mean, just like make sure you have a policy in place when you're onboarding customers and giving the sites over, and just talk about that. Don't leave this as a afterthought, basically. I think that would be a huge win already.
Yeah, the biggest
following
thing
up,
that we see,
go ahead.
people will get hacked, but the reality is they're on a leaked password list. There's been so many of them, these breaches that have taken place in the last 12, 24 months. I mean, even dating back to LinkedIn's, like my account was leaked from LinkedIn, right? Like people use these common passwords all over the place, and they're like, I got hacked. And it's like, no, you didn't get hacked. Your info was leaked and you never changed your password. And, we even have some method of detection. I can't remember if it's through Cloudflare or Immunify, but we do like a leaked password check on login. And if they're like detected in like the have I been owned or whatever, they get prompted to reset their password. But sometimes people just don't do it. I think one of the biggest tools is like 1Password, right? Like we use it for everything.
Using it,
but yeah, I mean, it's like a no-brainer. Like anytime, I don't have the same password on. I don't even know my password. I don't even know my password for my hosting.com email. It's so complex and long. It's just 1Password handles it for me. Hopefully 1Password doesn't get hacked, because otherwise we're all screwed. But but
well, that happened to LastPass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I'm gonna knock on some wood. But I definitely think getting a good password manager in place. Maybe a lot of people don't realize that that's out there. Number one, you get more secure passwords. You're not sharing the same password on multiple properties, but it also really streamlines like logging in. It's just so easy. Like I go to a site and bam, I'm logged in. I don't have to try to type anything. Like it just does it for me. So that's another big one for sure.
Another cool tip that I can tell about passwords is that forget passwords. Think of passphrases.
Yep.
And because if you think of them as passwords, then you're immediately like, oh, what should the word be? But think of a passphrase. It can be like a sentence. You can still remember a sentence, but for computers, that is way more difficult to basically brute force. The length is getting so much longer. So, for example, when I'm using the passwords for like my like 1Password, for example, I don't use passwords. I use passphrases. So I'm using sentences, and you can make up sentences of like, you can remember them sometimes actually even easier than passwords. So just a quick tip here for the passphrases.
and on the password management thing, it also makes you look more professional in front of your clients. You're just not dropping some credential in an email. You tell them, hey, this is how in my agency we are working with security, because security matters.
I think what you're touching also.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I just wanted to add here is what you're also kind of touching is that I think it's super important for agencies when they are onboarding a customer. One of the parts of like onboard, or like one of the onboarding bits, really need to be like, what does it mean to have a website? Like, I think a lot of the customers who are like, oh, I need a website and so forth, and then an agency is going to build them, they immediately get into the weeds of like, okay, what do you want it to look like, and what is the most important parts for you, like SEO, things like that, how we're going to build it and so forth. But I think we first need to talk about like, what does it mean to have a website? This is going to be your online presence. The moment when you're signing up a domain and you're putting it online, you are going to be a target. We have run tests. We have actually done tests where we registered the domain, we put like a dummy WordPress website on it, we put it, we connected it to Patchstack, and then we were like putting trackers on like how long it takes for the first attack to come in. And it was like 17 minutes, completely new website. And you have to remember, like, when you're building a website for someone who is coming to an agency, they have a reason why they don't want to build their own website, and they probably don't have the technical knowledge to do that. And the likelihood is that 90% of those users are like, oh, why should anyone hack my website? This is the number one thing that you always hear, is like, oh, I just have like this brick and mortar store. Why would anyone, like, there's nothing of value on the website. Like, why should anyone hack my website? So I think this is a responsibility of an agency. If you are bringing basically a company or someone online by building this online presence to them, you also talk about what it means to be online. But I think this is also an opportunity for agencies to offer maintenance plans. And I think every website that is being built today by an agency to a customer, maintenance plan needs to be non-optional, basically, unless they say that, oh, we have internal team. If they don't have an internal team, you need to have a maintenance plan, because they're like, if they didn't want to build their own website, they don't want to maintain it either.
I fully stand behind this. We have 3 minutes left. I have one final question. We have not talked that much about AI. I mean, it was always in the background, but what is going to change in 2026 because of AI, security-wise? And what can agency do about it? Because I think it's a big question mark for everybody right now.
Less time to protect your websites, more vulnerabilities. Like in January alone, this year in January, we received 1,600 something vulnerability reports in a single month. That used to be like 3 times the volume of the entire 2022 or something. So the number of vulnerabilities that are being found is going up. The time agencies have to react on security vulnerabilities is going down. So if you're like not automating security in some way, you're already kind of lost, because the bad guys on the other side, they are automating the shit out of it. And I think also security is gonna get a lot harder, because WordPress is merging with vibe coding. We see agencies vibe code plugins. We see services building React frontend on top of WordPress backend that comes with tons of Node.js libraries and things like that. So the attack surface on WordPress websites is actually getting bigger at the same time. So 2026 is going to be an interesting year, because there's so many new challenges that we need to face. And for agencies, I think it's more important than ever to stay up to date and think of security as an ongoing process, rather than something they can kind of like maybe give responsibility somewhere else, or just like not think about it at all. I think it's just you need to stay up to date, because everyone else is also trying to stay up to date. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I think we're going to continue to see a trend of unintentional issues from vibe coding. People that are creating plugins or automating some of their code writing and not necessarily understanding it. I think there's going to be some real opportunities for companies like Patchstack to leverage AI for detecting, this is, just trying to detect, get ahead of it, right? Like, is there a world where AI can scan a plugin and tell you if it's got a glaring...
We built this, by the way.
Exactly. I was kind of getting there, because I think you did, but yeah, there's, to me, like, it seems like a natural thing that it's like, we can all use the same AI. So, it's effectively like, how do we make sure we're leveraging it from the good to outdo the bad, right? So I do think we're going to see more script kiddies than ever. I think we're going to see, I think to one of Oliver's points earlier too, is like, it doesn't matter if it's a dental website, a lawyer's website, whatever it could be. Maybe it's a pizza shop. It doesn't matter. Once it's infected, it's now a tool and it is now a machine or system that is compromised, and they're able to do other things. Like, I've seen many cases where malware, once it gets in, it just starts trying to go further and further and further, or whether it's on a single server, which, we have protections against that with our hosting companies. But, a lot of these VPS providers don't have, sort of like a secure file system approach, where if you have one VPS with 50 websites on it, I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of cases where one website had a bad plugin, got infected, and then it infected every other website on the server, right? So, I think we're just going to see, so to Oliver's point, we already are seeing more infections, more vulnerabilities, but on the flip side, companies like Patchstack doing these creative things to use AI to try to get ahead of it.
There is something I would add on this. Additionally, something that we've seen on our bug bounty. I actually made a LinkedIn post about this earlier today, where we saw an open claw, moltbot, or however you want to call it. Basically, there are bots that are being told to, like, you are a bug bounty hunter, go and find vulnerabilities and report them into bug bounty programs. Something that I can already predict is there are, like, in the past you had like script kiddies basically using scanners to scan for a bunch of WordPress websites to, hack them, take them over, inject them, infect malware to them, and so forth. The same guys are now just going to use OpenClaw, tell like, hey, use any means necessary, bring money back home. And these are going to, like, absolutely wreck the internet. I'm not going to only talk about hacking websites. I'm talking about scamming everyone, doing all kinds of criminal stuff. And it's going to be like fully automated, and everyone is a target. And this is going to 100% happen. And this is a scary stuff. I mean, this is really scary, because they leverage, phone calls. They can mimic your voice. They can do all of that. They can actually go and start going after websites with social engineering combined, and so forth, and fully automated. And even the attackers themselves, they're just collecting money. AI is doing all of the work. So, we need to really kind of like keep our defenses up, because this is the stuff that we're going to be against with. So.
I was going to say that it was a very cool moment with you guys, but no, I'm scared as fuck.
Sorry, this is the reality, man. So
no, I mean, we need to tell the people about it, because when you are building websites, you have a responsibility in little one in display. So yeah, stay safe. Deploy Patchstack as much as you can. Take a secured hosting environment, and really, like, if you have 3 things to get out of this webinar, check your own contingency planning. What happens if I'm being hacked? Question a hosting company about what they do security-wise and how they can help you if you have been corrupted. And check your backup. Do the same with backups. And if you do these 3 things, along with, but this is so obvious and we should not even talk about it, but you should have a password manager and try to restrict admin access to your client as much as possible. you should be at least good to go, and you will be doing better than 80 or 90% of the people out there. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you so much, Oliver.
Thank you.
We will be next time we meet. It will be in Germany. Around the beer or several.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, same. Have a good day, everybody.
Right. Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. See you.